But for somebody that's been with us to this point saying, okay, what do I eat to create a balanced diet, regain my metabolic health? What would you say to them the foundation would be?
Well, yeah, and this changes with the seasons. I mean, I hate to just prescribe what I eat to everyone, because my diet might change over time and we're all different. But I think we need to eat foods that we enjoy, whole foods. And we need to consider, just like, if you were to call Dave Ramsey and say, hey, Dave, I have $300,000 in debt and all this, but I want to take my family to the Bahamas. He's probably going to say, not a good idea right now. Save up for a year. So what we probably should be doing is saying like, okay, well, if I don't have metabolic debt, if you don't have visceral adipose tissue, you don't have belly, your waist circumference is small, you don't have high blood pressure, you have more buffer room or tolerance to eat fruits, vegetables and grains and carbs, tubers and things like that. But if you have some metabolic debt, then you need to sort of dial down a little bit more, in my opinion, on and focus more on protein and healthy fats, and have carbs on days where you're particularly physically active. And so let's focus on proteins first. How much protein do we need? This is where getting a DEXA is really nice. You get a DEXA, your lean body mass. These tests cost $100, and so you know how much muscle you have. And so you want to focus on around at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean body mass. So that's a great target. Now, if you're a little bit overweight, if you're dieting, if you're in a calorie deficit, if you have insulin resistance, you might need more like 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you're brand new to exercise, you need a little bit more protein while you sort of figure this out and stimulate your muscle and all that, closer to maybe 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass. You can do your DEXA, titrate protein. I think it's good to do that first. Then look at, okay, well, are we having lean protein? Do you love chicken? If some people just love chicken, it's like, okay, well, chicken is very low calories, straight up protein, not getting enough fat. Where are you going to get your fats from? Could it be avocado? Could it be egg yolks? Could it be butter? Things like that. And then figure out, well, how much carbs do you need to fuel your activities and feel good? And so I think working backwards from that lens. And so what does that look like more practically? I think honestly having eggs and avocado in the morning. And if you're really fit, you can have some sourdough bread or maybe some berries or some fruit or something like that. 3 meals a day. For lunch, I'm a big fan of red meat. So it could be a ribeye steak. It could be ground beef. I like to mix in fermented vegetables like fermented carrots, fermented beets, or kimchi with olives. Huge fan. Like that's really what most of our meals look like. Cooking with butter, cooking with lard or tallow. So that's something that we'll do. And then, for dinner time, it's very similar to lunch. It might be sweet potatoes. It might be turnips, butternut squash. The carbs will change on the season and things like that. Using the crock pot or slow cooker all the time, bone-in cuts of grass-fed beef or lamb, utilizing the bones to then make bone broth after the fact. So yeah, that's kind of what things look like. And then periodically you throw in the sourdough pizza or sourdough bread or whatever here or there on days where you're pretty physically active, so striving to just eat whole unprocessed foods. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And if sourdough bread's off the table for people and you want more carbs, you can do sprouted rice. You just take your rice, soak it in filtered water overnight, drain it, put it in the pressure cooker, with some lamb fat or butter, and it'll taste amazing. And you'll digest more of that. So yeah, mostly red meat, eggs, butter, olives, fermented foods, and then either tubers, we're talking like parsnips, turnips, squash, root vegetables, beets, carrots, all that. And yeah, I don't need a ton of vegetables personally, but not to say that vegetables are unhealthy. I just find that I don't digest them that well. So I don't recommend them often for people. But, you go out to dinner, it's like, what do you eat? I generally just get like a burger with no bun, a grass-fed steak with potatoes or something, keeping it simple. People have been doing that forever. You go to various parts of Europe or Iceland. I mean, this is how people eat, and we don't see the obesity and the diabetes and things like that. So that's what I recommend.
For somebody that's really accumulated that metabolic debt and they want to fast forward and get their metabolic health back, how do you feel about using a tool like the carnivore diet to really accentuate gaining that metabolic health back quickly?
Yeah, Jesse, I think it's a wonderful tool for people like you mentioned, that fit that bucket. Also, for anyone with gastrointestinal issues, we're talking constipation, diarrhea, post-meal tenesmus, where they're running to the bathroom to expel the bowels and all that. Any autoimmunity, psoriasis, rosacea, multiple sclerosis, carnivore is really effective for that. So yeah, I think it's an amazing tool. And I was one of the biggest voices against carnivore early on because I thought, what about the microbiome? I couldn't get my head out of the sand about microbiome health and dietary diversity, to be honest. And then I started to just hear from my own clients, like, I had IBS for years and I tried carnivore and it went away. I was like, and it just over and over and over hear these stories. So I think carnivore can be amazing. And then it's a great reset. And then you can slowly introduce the foods and really know what foods agree with you versus don't, and I think that's where the magic happens.
So you've mentioned how you prioritize beef. We'll end on this. How do you look at the hierarchy of different meats? It sounds like beef would be at the top, but take it down from there.
Yeah. I think grass-fed, what's unique about beef and lamb, I think is one of the best, because you can trick cattle into eating corn and soy and stuff like that. But lamb and sheep, they just feed on grass, right? So it's harder to like feed them crap, And so I think, in wild game, if you could hunt your own food, get a deer for your family or a bear once a year, that would be like the creme de creme. That would be perfect. But grass-fed beef, I think, is a wonderful health food in terms of all the different carnonutrients. We talked about creatine earlier, but there's carnitine. There's obviously essential amino acids. There's a recently published study finding that just a beef patty, just 23 grams of protein, will stimulate muscle protein synthesis more than an 8-ounce soy protein meal replacement that has 40 grams of protein. So the amino acid composition in ruminant animals is much superior to plant-sourced foods. So that's the take-home message. But yeah, in terms of hierarchical, overview, wild game is going to be at the top. Wild fish is up there with wild game, and then grass-fed pasture-raised cattle. Lower on down that would be feedlot cattle, and then kind of at the bottom would be chicken and pig. I'm not a huge fan of pig. Pigs will eat anything. You could put Skittles, you could put a dead body in I used to have pigs. They will eat anything. So it's easier to feed them corn and soy and all that junk. And so, what they eat, you are eating, right? And so, that's how I would look at that.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
The thing that's going against us, especially if we're living life blind and drinking soda and having just sandwiches and French fries and not moving, is as our metabolism falls into this so-called insulin resistant or metabolically dysfunctional category, we naturally become more catabolic. Our muscle becomes compromised. And part of that is because